So when I was just off to college out of high school, I, female and 18 at the time, moved in with a good friend named Karen, and her friend Tara, who was 21. We moved to New York City, but as rent is wildly expensive there, we wound up getting an apartment in the shadiest part of Harlem. It was a decent apartment, and a doorman clinched the deal for us. Normally, the shady neighborhood was alright. No big deal. We just ignored the catcalls during the day and didn't really leave the apartment at night. However, Tara and I really hit it off from the beginning, and she knew a bunch of fun places to go drinking where they wouldn't card me in downtown Manhattan. I hadn't been doing that well emotionally, and she decided that I could use a fun night out. We said screw it and decided to go hit the town. Karen was still back in our hometown that weekend, so she didn't get to come with us. We got all dolled up for a night on the town, and wore these stupid heels that we would both later regret. So Tara and I took 2 subway trains to this nice karaoke bar, where the really good people get up to perform. We just watched and enjoyed the drunk theater people try on their night off. At this point, Tara had had a few drinks, but I'd had a few more, and I was having a tough time walking in a straight line back to the subway at the end of the night. We were both laughing though, and were really glad that we had decided to go out. Then, we got on the first train home. We were sitting, waiting to reach our stop to transfer, when we both noticed this young guy with his hood up on the other end of the car, a few people down. Now, that's not super unusual for Manhattan, so we just tried to ignore him. But it was a bit awkward, as he was staring at us unrelentingly. Again, not super unusual. We were dressed up, and some people just stare in the city. No big deal, ignore them and they usually go away. We finally get to our stop, and of course, the guy in the hoodie followed us off the subway train and to the stop for the next one we were catching. Again, we put it down to a coincidence. In a city of 8 million people, odds are someone might be going the same direction you are. Nevertheless, we did decide to keep an eye on him. We didn't want to jump the gun with accusations, but it was starting to feel really off with just how much he was staring at us. We tried to just mind our own business, particularly as Tara had to keep me from tipping over every so often, which broke the tension and made us laugh for a second. On the next train, we were the only passengers, save for one other person and the hoodie guy again. We stayed absorbed in each other, giggling over some pictures on Tara's phone, hoping that if we didn't pay attention to him, he would just get his fill of staring and decide he wasn't interested anymore. Especially if we laughed and made it look like we weren't really afraid of him. At one point, though, I glanced back at him. I couldn't help myself, and saw what looked like a piece of metal poking out of the sleeve of that overlarge sweatshirt. He saw me looking, and we looked at each other in the face for maybe a fraction of a second, but the focus of his stare made it feel so much longer. His gaze was totally calm and unrelenting. I looked back at Tara and widened my eyes, flicking them toward him in a sort of, "Crap, Tara, look at this guy" communication. She did, and I was watching her face the whole time. I saw all the color go out of it, as she too spotted what looked like a knife up his sleeve. Tara told me later that they too had locked eyes, and she'd felt everything inside her freeze. I didn't know what to do, as calling the police would probably alert this guy right in front of us in an isolated spot, and we were almost at our stop. When we got off, our apartment was about 4 blocks from the subway, so the way I figured it, we had a better chance of getting home than of the police getting to the subway to help us by the time we had pulled into our station. As soon as the car stopped, we got out, and my slightly drunk ass immediately reached down and took off my shoes, while still walking upwards towards the stairs to the street. Tara didn't bother, but she was already halfway up the stairs. I turned around to see where the hoodie guy had gone, and there he was, walking confidently towards me, eyes deadpan, but never moving away from me. I felt like I was going to vomit with fear. My stomach was twisting so much. I suddenly felt like I hadn't had a drop to drink. I ran up the stairs behind Tara, and we both just let loose down the street. My mother had given me pepper spray in a little bottle that looked like lipstick as a housewarming present, so I tried to unzip my purse and get my hands inside while we were running, but it was next to impossible, and it was slowing me down. I looked back again, and of course, he was running too. Now his knife was totally out of his hoodie as he pumped his hands. It looked like one of those big switchblades, which are totally illegal. I kept glancing back, even though I was running almost full out at this point, trying to keep Tara next to me with her heels still on. Maybe it was just because I was so damn scared at the time, but it seemed like running was nothing to him. He was still so calm and zeroed in on us. He stared straight into my eyes whenever I looked, and had pitched this little half smile onto his face. Totally calm, not grinning or angry or any kind of emotion I could recognize, just a sort of casual, I'm going to catch you, and you know it, face. We ran past the usual group of homeless guys about halfway to our building, who made some kind of comment I couldn't hear. I assumed they were making fun of us when they saw us running towards them, me with no shoes on in a really gross part of the city, but I have to wonder whether they helped us by waylaying the guy after, because we managed to get to our building and have the doorman buzz us in with some seconds to spare. We ran panting and half crying to the doorman's desk, staring at the doors the whole time, and had just enough time to start explaining in hysterics that we were being followed. There was a huge rattle at the front doors, and the guy was there, shaking the handles violently, trying to rip them open and get to us. The doorman whipped out his walkie-talkie and yelled at us to go upstairs. We didn't need telling twice. We got in the elevator and held each other, shocked and crying, hearing yelling from outside. It faded as we went up to the 3rd floor, where our apartment was at. When we got upstairs, we went straight to our balcony, which was on the left side of the building. We had come to the front door from the right, but we thought maybe we could hear something from there. We did. We heard yelling. Just one voice, high for a man's, clear and fiercely shouting "fuck" over and over. After a minute, it stopped, and we couldn't hear anything else. The police showed up shortly afterwards for statements, but as far as I know, they never found the guy. I moved out of the city shortly afterwards for a variety of reasons. My dad still feels bad that he thought Harlem was a nice, cheap option, but it's alright. Everything turned out okay, and I'm not living there anymore. Still, I've always wondered why he followed us all the way from downtown, and why he didn't attack earlier. How did we get away? And why did he want to stab us in the first place? Things like that. The cool, detached expression on his face, paired with those intense eyes on mine, has stuck with me ever since. Here's some background information before I launch into the story. At the time of this encounter, I was 16 and was participating in an exchange program. My high school in America was partnered with a high school in Germany. I've been learning German since kindergarten. And every year, about 10 or so kids from the German program at my high school get to go live in Germany with the host family for the summer. My exchange partner, Vanessa, and I got along great. As it turned out, my best friend Rebecca was on the exchange with me, and her partner, Anne Catherine, was best friends with Vanessa. Needless to say, the 4 of us were practically inseparable. One day, we decided to head into Nuremberg to do some shopping. Vanessa and Anne Catherine lived on the same street, so the 4 of us walked into the little subway station thing by their house. They lived about 10 minutes outside of the city, so the subway train ride wasn't long at all. As we were taking the escalator down to catch the subway, we hear someone whistling at us. Thinking it would be some dumb boy just messing around, we look around to see who it was. We hear the whistling sound again, and lock eyes with a man riding on the up escalator. We were on the down one, so we locked eyes right as we passed each other. The man was probably in his late 50s or early 60s, and he was huge. I would guess around 6'7" in height, and easily close to 300 pounds. Stupidly, the four of us wave at him. We were just messing around and didn't think the guy would think anything of it. Much to our chagrin, he took it as an invitation to begin terrorizing us. He suddenly starts sprinting up the escalator, and once he gets to the top, gets on the down escalator and starts shoving people out of the way to get to us. For a big guy, this dude was moving fast. It was apparent that he wanted to get to us, though the people surrounding us probably thought he had left something on a train and wanted to get to it before it was too late. At this point, we were basically at the bottom, so we take off running, and by the grace of God, the train we needed had already pulled up. We run onto the train and sit down, relieved that we got away from this scary guy. Or so we thought. The train we were on was separated into sections, so there were see-through doors you had to go through if you wanted to get to a different one, if that makes sense. About a minute into our subway ride, we see the guy moving through the section in the front of ours. We immediately stand up and sprint to the next one, hoping that we'll find a more crowded one that we can hide in. This goes on for a few more minutes, until we realize that we've reached the front of the train. We sit down in the 4 seats closest to the front, and sure enough, the man comes barging into our section. He sits in a single seat across from us, and positions himself so he has a clear view. He starts laughing really deep and slow. We were trying so hard not to look at him, but out of the corner of my eye, I could see that his eyes were unblinking and bulging out of his head. He was grinning in such a malicious way, and had started to drool. He even licked his lips a few times. We start whispering in English to each other, hoping this guy's English isn't that strong, and we decide that at our next stop, we're going to sprint off the train and find a policeman or someone who can help us. And the train gets to our stop, and we bolt off. Luckily, it's pretty crowded, so we're hoping to duck out of sight and then find anyone who will help us. We turn around to make sure he isn't behind us, and the guy hasn't gotten off the train. He's shifted though, so he has a clear view of us from the window by his seat. We watch for a little, and the train begins to pull away, but not before the man widens his smile and begins slowly waving at us. I swear he didn't break eye contact or stop waving until the train was entirely out of sight. I don't really know what that guy wanted with us, or why he was so hell-bent on chasing us through the train. Maybe he was planning on getting off at our stop with us, but when he saw how crowded it was, decided to just stay on the train because he knew he wouldn't get away with whatever he was plotting. All I know is that I was absolutely scared shitless. I'm a female and I was 14 at the time. I'm from a big city in Germany, and that afternoon I wanted to buy a birthday present for a friend. I planned on taking the subway downtown where all the shops were. Even though my home city is big, it's considered very safe, so I never felt unsafe going to friends' houses or downtown by myself. While I was waiting on the platform, a guy slowly walked past me and stopped just a few meters away from me. I remembered that he must have been in his late teens or early 20s, and that he had glasses on. While I looked around the platform, bored, since the subway wouldn't arrive for another 3 minutes, I noticed that the guy was looking directly at me. Being a rather shy girl back then, I quickly looked away. After a few seconds, I wanted to check if he was still looking, and I took a quick glance. Sure enough, the guy was still staring. This went on until the subway arrived. By then, I was feeling really uncomfortable. Luckily, there had been a few other people on the platform, so I still felt kind of safe. I got on and succeeded to snatch one of the few empty seats left, since it was close to Christmas and the subway was packed with people. I couldn't see the guy from my seat, so I slowly calmed down. A couple of minutes later, I got off at my stop and took the escalator up to the street. While standing on it, I turned around, and my heart sank. The creepy guy from the platform was standing a few meters behind me, on the same escalator, and he was staring at me. I tried to calm myself by thinking that this station was a popular meeting spot, and a lot of people wanted to go shopping off of here. Since it was Christmas, he was probably just some random shopper. When I arrived on the street, I turned right, walked down the street corner, and turned right again at the next. When I turned the corner, I quickly looked down the street I was coming from, and the guy was still walking in my direction. I felt really uncomfortable, so I entered a bookshop and waited behind a bookshelf for the guy to walk to wherever he was heading. After a few minutes, I decided it was safe and got out of the shop, and that was the moment I started to panic. The guy was standing just a few meters away from the store, waiting for me to come out. I should have ran back in and called my parents to pick me up. Instead, stupid 14-year-old me hoped that there was some logical explanation for this guy's behavior, and he might just have been waiting for someone else. I got out of the store and walked in the opposite direction of where this guy was. I walked faster, hoping that if he was following me, I would lose him among the other shoppers. But when I turned right at the next corner, I was walking around the block. I looked back down the street again. He was still just a few meters behind me. While I walked even faster, I felt like I was about to cry, but I knew I had to keep calm. So I turned right again, and when I looked back, I could still see him behind me. I was positive that he was indeed following me. What other reason would he have to walk around a block without entering any of the stores? While I tried to think about a way to escape, I suddenly saw my chance. The street light on the crossing just a few meters in front of me turned red, and I started running as fast as I could. I managed to make it just barely to the other side before the lane was packed with traffic. I looked back. The guy didn't make it across the street and was standing on the other side, waiting for the light to turn green again, but this time with a creepy, wide grin. At that moment, I felt so scared as I'd never felt before in my life, and started running again, this time into a big department store just a few meters away from me. I knew that the store had another entrance at the back facing another street. On that street, there was usually a line of cabs waiting to pick up shoppers. I sprinted through the store and out the other entrance. To my greatest relief, there was the usual line of cabs. I practically jumped into the first one I could get to. In tears, I told the cab driver my home address, and then shouted, while frantically looking back to the door, expecting the guy to come out any second. Fortunately, I didn't see him. I'm still thankful that the cab driver instantly started driving, and only asked what happened and if I was alright when we were a few blocks away. In tears and completely shaken, I told him about the guy that was following me and how scared I was, and when we arrived at my parents' house, he refused to charge me and waited until I was safely inside. To this day, I'm still grateful to that cab driver. I don't know if that guy who was following me was just playing a very cruel prank on me and just wanted to scare me, or if he had something way more sinister in mind. What's up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end. If you guys enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave a comment below, or perhaps like, share, or subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you guys have any story suggestions, types of stories you'd like to hear, or personal stories that you'd like me to read, take a look in the description below. There will be links to my Gmail, Twitter, and Facebook accounts. You can go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I will try to look at your suggestion or your story as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story to me, please feel free to include in the tagline what the story is about, if it has a theme, and how you would like to be edited in the description of the video that your story may appear in. For those of you who are curious about the music used in the video, the music is always listed in the description, in the order of which it appears, by name, and I will also have links to the artists who made the tracks. So go ahead and check that out if you're curious about the music. If you guys have any constructive criticism, please feel free to leave it in the comments below, as I'm always looking for new ways to improve the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.